I've got that screen time. And I think we're live.
Good
morning, people. How are we doing? This fine Monday morning. It's actually very nice outside again, to be fair.
So it's lovely here.
Who we got in so far? Tash, of course, waiting. Well, we're here on time, so we didn't wait that long. Xander's back. Morning, Xander. Hope you had a lovely honeymoon. Well, honeymoon trip to anniversary. That's what I was going for. Simon, lovely to see you, and Jack. Still waiting for the day when you swap the head positions on the thumbnail.
We did it once.
Did we? I think you did do it, didn't you?
I did it once just to mess with people, and then
Did you keep it?
No, I put it back straight away. For the next episode, it went straight back. So there's just one that's randomly out of place just to mess with people.
Actually, I haven't actually looked at that. Probably it's quite funny because they all look like conjoined twins, and then it's like
There's one where it's just my face on my face.
Morning, Crystal. So how are we doing this week? How are we doing after the weekend? Did everyone see Chris dance? I hope you did. It was a rare treat.
Do you know what the funny thing was? I think that's my best performing like story in terms of views and likes and like interactions, like period.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think I had like 47 likes and like a bunch of laughing faces. I had a couple of messages and stuff like that. I think it ended on maybe 465 views or something. Like, because obviously people like look through the stories and stuff.
Yeah.
It ended up on like 460 something.
Maybe you need to get a bit silly goofy more often, you know.
I mean, it's my natural disposition, but obviously in a business setting we have to be more professional, of course.
Oh yeah, of course.
We try anyway.
How was my weekend? What have I been up to? So I've cross-listed on Vinted for the first time. Well, except for like the challenge that I did before. Obviously, I was meant to do
400. And how many did we get done, Benji?
80. Because basically I was using Vendoo, which was actually a very interesting experience. They've got a bulk editor on Vendoo, like eBay. They've got like a bulk editor tool, which was actually really interesting. But it doesn't exactly work flawlessly because you obviously with the stuff that when you're cross-listing, right, the stuff that you normally need to put in is make sure you put it in the exact right category because it hasn't got the category perfectly. The color sometimes, and then like
cream quite a lot color. I don't know what.
So and then parcel size you have to put in as well. So in terms of and then the actual size of the item, like if you change the category on Vendoo, the item changes size as well. Like you have to reset that, basically resets the size. So all of those you have to put in individually, and for 400 things it takes a while. And basically ended up not working exactly. And basically when I went to list it individually, I had to redo it anyway. So I spent, no joke, probably close to 2-3 hours just entering individual colors and sizes. And then when I went to cross-list them, like make them live, it hadn't saved them in the right format. And I basically had to do it all again, which was just, I would be much further wrong if I just went individually and did them all, but that's what I ended up doing anyway. But experiences. So I've had lots and lots of notifications, lots and lots of stuff. You know, people have interest. I've sold two things which I thought should have sold. One that you had even told me previously had been overpriced, but sold on Vinted for like within a day, for like just under the price I had it at. I think I had it up for way too high. Because basically what I did. Oh, do you know what was super interesting? So you know when I did the 30 a day thing, the 30v30, when you change the prices, it changes to like pennies, right? Like 29.79 or something like that. On Vendoo, I took 25% off everything, and it rounds to the nearest whole number, which is very nice. Because you can, like I said, you can bulk edit all the prices. Like so, basically, I reduced them all by $3.99 to remove the postage, and then I reduced them by 25% after that, and it made them all round and nice and pretty. And basically chucked that up. But yeah, not too many bites. I've had 2 bites, one of which I definitely thought would have sold by now. But yeah, a lot of favorites.
Did you get to send out the offers? Because obviously the issue when you're in my opinion, the issue when you're uploading quite a big quantity, which I've recently done because I've been obviously re-adding my entire eBay store, right? Because I deleted everything. One of the things I noticed is that I would put my phone down, go back to my phone, I'd have 140 notifications. And obviously on Vinted, you can only send out 25-ish offers at a time. So I was basically missing, unless I was on it. And even if you're on it all the time, like you do 25, but then if you put your phone down for 10 minutes and another 20, you can't send offers again for another like 40 minutes or whatever. It ends up, I think it's like an hour or something in between.
Wait, I thought you could only send 25 a day.
No. So you can send, no, if you're buying, you can only send 25 offers a day. If you're selling, you can send 25 offers, but then after a period of time, you can just send another 25.
And you have a cooldown.
I don't know what the cooldown is. I think it's about an hour or something like that. But so my issue is when you're bulk uploading, what tends to happen for me is that I basically just run out of offers, and then I have to wait ages. So you're just missing a shit ton. So you're actually better off probably doing what I think where you do like say 10 in the morning, then 10 in the afternoon, then 10 in the evening. So those notifications that you get on those, you can send all of the offers out that are possible in each bulk upload or whatever. So I think that's probably the smart way to do it. Obviously, we know that me and you aren't really there for like with Vinted. It's
we're just building out. Right? I haven't sent a single offer out. I actually think I'll go over and I was trying to see if Vendoo had what Accelerator has with the
auto offers or whatever it is.
The auto offers, because I would have done that, but it doesn't. It only has automatic offers for Depop and eBay, which is interesting, right? Because you could actually set up automatic offers through, like, obviously no one likes doing it on eBay because it can fuck stuff up and whatever. So I don't know if Vendoo makes it any better, but they do the same sort of thing. You can set percentages, you can set anything across the board, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so we've gone the way to that. I didn't do 400. I got very bored after doing 80, to be honest with you.
You did do what I do in life, right? Which is you procrastinate and don't do the thing. And then when you start doing the thing, you realize you've left yourself an absolute mountain of a task because you've just let it build up and build up and build up rather than being consistently do. So this is why I said to you, like, with the 400, were you going to list a certain amount every day, or were you going to try and bulk it up? Because realistically, 10 a day isn't a big deal, but 400 in 24 hours, 48 hours is a big deal. Like, it's a long time.
This is what I was saying. I was putting effort into getting them all ready, like with this bulk lister. Yeah. I put 2-3 hours in up like from Wednesday. I was getting it started. I got it started on Wednesday. I put an hour into getting all the filthy details in. Then I did it on Friday a bit again. And then I did Saturday, which I think was my first set of uplisting. And then I realized it was all worthless. So we had to start all over again. So I would have got more done, but I fucked it up because I was playing around and seeing what worked and it didn't work.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense.
But apart from that, that's good. We'll see if this is a start to our Vinted love story. But at least the next what this is.
Start listing newer items, because obviously we've said before, right? Like with the newer items, when they sell, I'm really happy because I'm like, well, I'm doing something right now. It's like it's working now. Whereas you're like, that should be happening, but you're happier when the older items sell, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I don't want to do it.
Like seeing the stuff that has got no traction on eBay, like get motion in the ocean. I'm like, let's go.
So it'll be interesting if you do start listing some of your more like fresh items on Vinted. It'll be interesting to see whether, because they're just better items probably anyway, like whether that will be the catalyst that pushes it forward maybe.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a place for that, which is if I wouldn't expect 100% all the old stuff I'm putting on to sell that fast, because it's the stuff that isn't as good. Whereas it'd be interesting to see the difference if I put 80 items on of my recents.
Yeah.
So
did you go for a spotlight in this time, or did you not worry about that?
Oh, I thought about this, right? And I was like, what's the point of spotlighting when everything's different?
So I spotlight, right? So my theory is I spotlight all of the time because spotlighting highlights your older items. So for me, obviously Vinted is a recency bias when uploading, right? So for me now, spotlighting for you wouldn't be the ideal because you haven't really got any old items. So for the first week of uploading the items, I wouldn't worry about it. But once you have items on there that have been listed for a week or longer, then spotlighting, I think, becomes key, because somebody will see something. I don't sell very many multi-quantity orders, but I notice a dramatic drop off when I'm not spotlighting on Vinted.
Do you know what was big on Vendu?
Go on.
I don't know how they're going to do this, but they do multi-quantity cross-listing.
Okay.
And what it does, I don't know how it works quite yet, but I basically did it on one of the tops I had multi-quantity on. And it said, hey, this is a multi-quantity listing. This is how it works. And basically, it will keep one in the active and one in the sold because it has like a whole sold section every time one sells. And I don't know if it just re-uploads it or what, like, and makes it slightly different. I have no idea how it works yet, but it was like, hey, you've done a multi-quantity cross listing. This will stay in this area, so you can just, and it will stay populating every single time you sell one.
Works efficiently. That's a game changer, really.
Big, right?
For sure.
So I'm interested to see how that works. I might test it with like one of my Sweaty Betty ones and see what it does, maybe with some leggings or something. But because right now the one that I did multi-quantity cross list only had, even though it was multi-quantity, it only had one left available. So I don't know if it takes into account how many are left and all this sort of thing. So yeah, I've sold this now. I'm actually going to see if it's still in my actives on here. But yeah, very, very interesting. If it does work effectively, then fantastic. Yeah, so there's still one being for sale, so I actually need to take that down from both because I think it's got it wrong. But I don't know. How does that work on Vinted then? I'm actually going to go check. Did it upload a new item? Sorry, distraction quickly.
Shells is saying that she hasn't spotlighted for a few weeks. Sales are good. Cash flow recently a bit tight, so I stopped. I feel like listing new stock is similar traffic. I agree. I literally think that the best thing to do on Vinted is just to be active every day. Give your items the best chance of selling on a consistent basis. But I think once you have items that are maybe like a couple of weeks old, that's probably when you'll see the most benefit from the spotlight. Because what happened with me specifically was when I had a lot of items on there, I had like 2,000 or whatever. What was happening on Vinted is I would just randomly, like maybe once or twice a day, I was just getting random sales from items that were well over 6 months old. Do you know what I mean? And I'm assuming it's just somebody who's gone into the spotlight and seen it randomly.
Yeah, I might do that. But yeah, my thought was literally just everything. Because in my head, when I see spotlights, I see them in like when I'm searching. So if I'm like in a search and I do, for, like Bowden or whatever, you'll see Kaylee pop up a million times, or Kate sometimes, or whatever. You'll see the stores pop up with the same sort of stuff. I'm like, oh, if I'm just cross-listed a million different things, then what's the point?
Because there will be in terms of brands, there will be some crossover, and in terms of sizes, there will be some crossover. So I think it does. I think it doesn't matter too much. I think it'll work better if you're somebody selling a shit ton of Bowden, right? In all sizes and all stuff. But I think it still has its benefits, even if you're selling random stuff like us.
I'll give it a look then. I'll give it a look and see what.
I mean, it's only £8 for a week. And I think if you haven't done it before, I think you get like a 50% off. I think it's currently 10% off. So there's a potential that you can get it pretty cheap.
I'm literally messaging Vendu right now to see how the multi-quantity listing works.
Yeah, Chris Drakes was asking about it. It is Vendu that does the cross listing.
Okay, we'll see if they respond to that. All right, the topic for today, after babbling about Vinted as you do for good part of 15 minutes. This was you suggested this, but I quite like it. Which is, I don't know what your interpretation was. You just kind of put men's versus women's. I think in the chat. And this is an interesting topic to get into, and obviously it's going to be very clothing orientated, generally speaking. We'll get into a bit of sourcing, like divides later, more specifically. But the first part is definitely going to be a bit clothing orientated. So buckle in, non-clothing sellers. I see Hanley there. But men's versus women's in terms of clothing, I don't know what you meant. I took it as sourcing, selling, what it's like, the differences, how you get there, what's more successful, so on and so forth, blah 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 blah. What were you thinking?
So in my head, what one of the things that's happened massively in my business over the last 12 months is obviously I started doing women's clothing, which I wasn't doing. Like, I don't know the exact timeline, but it was around June or July, and I think it was last year. I started doing women, like buying and selling women's clothing and trying to learn it and stuff. And what I realized very quickly is that I couldn't blitz charity shops the same way I used to. So that used to take more time. But I was walking, so sometimes I was walking away with no men's clothing. I was walking out with 2 IKEA bags worth of women's clothing. And I actually did a story on it. I think about 2 months after I started. So again, complete noob and didn't really know a lot. And obviously it was a learning process, but I did a story and I said, I've been doing women's clothing for 2 months and I've picked up no men's clothing in this town, but I've still got 2 IKEA bags worth of clothes because women's was just such an untapped market. So one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up was I just thought it was super fascinating. Now, obviously, because I've started picking up a lot of women's clothing in general, I'm going to start selling women's clothing in general. But what was really interesting was the percentage in which I'm selling women's clothing over men's now. And it's around a 65-35 split in terms of like in the women's, like 65 to the women. So like it's drastically increased.
So yours is 65 to women, yeah?
Yeah, it's drastically increased.
Check mine. So
have you been doing men's and women's clothing the entire time, or did you start in men's and then women's?
No. I don't know. Because I knew nothing about either. So I think I just kind of went into both because I started at the car boots with no, I didn't. I started in charity shops and I think I did both, but I was terrible at women's at the start. Like I was just picking up, I was terrible in general. Like I picked up bad men's stuff as well. So I've got 406 women's solds.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's not what I want to do. 406 to 406 to so it's a 406 to 341. So mine's probably pretty similar, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
406 341. I can't bother to do the math on that, but that's the split. In terms of men's and women.
Mine is.
But, I wasn't.
I was just going to say it's probably actually a bigger split because it's actually 289 men's, 462 women's.
God, big split.
But obviously that's just eBay, so we're not taking into account Vinted, where I do sell a multitude of either. But I understand I'm sourcing a lot more women's in general, right?
This is what I asked.
Yeah.
Do you think because you're on Vinted, what are you sniping more of?
Women's. It's just natural.
Really?
So this is one of the reasons why I thought it was such a fascinating topic, right? Because I was so pro. So I believe Simon does this as well, or was doing this. I think he might have changed and he's doing a little bit of the women's side now. But when it was men's, it was you were in a charity shop for no more than 10 minutes. You go in, you leave, you get to the next charity shop, and you could do 40 to 50 charity shops in a day, right? And when you start doing women's, it takes infinitely longer because the size of the stores is crazy.
4 times the size.
The percentage in which of the women's clothing is valuable, right, is so small. But the percentage, if you go into a men's section, right, and there's 100 pieces, if you find one valuable item, it's usually 35, 45 pound and above. Like they just have good valuable stuff in men's, right? Whereas women's, I could find 2 items out of 300 and they'd be worth 30. Do you know what I mean? So like that's what I find super fascinating. And one of the things I've massively noticed with the women's and men's is Shell says it here, like men are simple creatures. We like brands and we have a very basic style in general. And that's
I very much agree with you that like whenever I go to a men's section, my hit rate. So it's interesting you use the example of walking out with a load of women's clothes versus men's. My hit rate in men's, like considering the size, is normally higher. Like I don't know. My thought often on this is that it's because it's less picked through. Like I feel like women come in and obviously they're women are generally more frequent shoppers in the shop. They get a lot more women in. They browse the rails a lot more. Women generally might know some more about like the higher end stuff that they might like or whatever. but it feels more like, for example, with the types of deal I have, right, where I'm waiting for something to go finish the cull cycle, I am much more likely to find men's stuff that gets good stuff that gets the end of the cull cycle than women's.
That makes so much sense as well.
Which is super interesting. And I like you said, but then you look at it, right, and you say, oh, I'm opening up a new world, there's lots of stuff, but the percentage is low. Does it still make sense to just do men's because it's efficient, and if the hit rate's better and you can get more stuff? Then I don't know, but then it depends how far you got to drive to hit all the shops. It's like a 50-50. But in terms of, like, if I had to pick one, if you had to pick one to now source only in charity
it's women's without a shadow of a doubt. In charity shops, it's women's 100% without a shadow of a doubt.
Really?
And I don't know. I mean, we'll get onto this a little bit later on, but we live in vastly different areas in terms of wealth and whatever. And one of the things that I know, and I speak to a lot of charity shop managers, and they always say that men don't tend to donate stuff, it's the women. And the women that do donate are usually donating stuff that the men have basically worn for the entirety of the last 4 years. So when it comes to trainers and stuff, there's always significant wear on them. With shirts and stuff, there's usually stains and pit stains, or there's rip, because men inherently are more likely to wear their items for longer, whereas women unfortunately have been sort of knocked into this fast fashion, wear it a couple of times, wear it once, and get rid, and that's where it gets difficult. But yeah, I think women's for me is just, and one thing I'll say this, like I watched a video, and this kid's like 19 in America, right? But he said something that really got to me, which was, if your business is reliant on the triple figure items, like every now and then you haven't got a business, because the business is built on bread and butter. And for me, I find more 30 to 45 pound items when it comes to women than I do when it comes to men. Men, I might find an item worth 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, but the frequency in which I can find those items is pretty low. And with women's, I'm finding a lot of the 35 to 45 items. And women do double RL. I've got currently got a silk women's double RL shirt, which is really nice.
I'm trying to think about what I found, so okay, I can 100% back you that all my highest sales have been men's stuff.
Yeah,
pretty much always. Like, there's been I think I sold one Vivienne Westwood dress for like 300, and then one Issey Miyake coat for like 250, 300, and then aside from that, almost all my highest sales ever, anything over £200 for sure, is men's. Almost always. Women's, even between the 100 to 200 mark, right? Like, most of it's probably men's. And I struggle. Like, there's a few things every now and then, some dresses, mainly dresses. Like, there's not really anything else I can think of that really holds. Like, even I can't think of any coat for a woman except for that Issey Miyake one that I found that is worth.
One full wool Vivienne Westwood long coat, and I think that went for 150 on Vinted. That's probably, I think that's probably the only non-dressy, because I've sold a lot of dresses for 75 to 100, like the Rixo and stuff like that. But in terms of anything other than a dress, probably not. Maybe one or two. There's probably one or two things that we're probably dismissing. But yeah,
there's probably some. Feel free to shout us if anyone has your guys are dancing about this.
Of course, the uber expensive Louis Vuittons and stuff like that. There's probably a lot of stuff that isn't dresses there, but just for the generalization of it, probably.
Well, I'm talking about what I picked up, right? Which is I can come across men's stuff that sells over 100, semi-frequently, whereas women's stuff that sells over 100, I come across very rarely in comparison. So one thing that you'd say, Shelter says, we're simpler, right? It's not only that there's simpler things, there's not as much to pick through. It's that the ease to figure out what it is that you're buying is easier as well. It's much more simple. Men's versus women's. Oh, mate, the difference is difficult because when you go to men's, you're like, hey, there's a few. We've seen this with the men's versus women's clothing call, to be honest, because me and Chris did summer wear on Friday, and we could do one call where it covers all of men's summer wear. like the things that are like different or interesting that you really only wear in summer versus the thing like just year round. Whereas women's, you could have about 7 different calls on different aspects of styles of summer wear that you can wear, which is crazy. Like, and to be able to learn that and understand the intricacies of why something is good versus not good in women's is much more difficult.
And women, it's one thing that was the biggest takeaway from the men's clothing call this week was that there was a very few select brands inside of the summer category, right? But women's, when we've done little bits on women's stuff, M&S does like not crazy money, but like people are loving like they're happy to buy the cheaper non-branded stuff based on style. Whereas men, it's brand, and that's one of the reasons why I like brands, because I spent a lot of my time doing men's clothing, and that's where that's one struggle I have with women's, because sometimes I pick up stuff, right, and Kaylee shouts at me all the time, and I'm like, "This brand's really good," and she goes, "Yeah, but it's fucking ugly."
That's an ugly piece, yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, but the brand's good," and she's like, "It doesn't work like that," and that's where it gets like, do you know what I mean? That's when it gets a lot more difficult and stuff like that, because. Yeah.
So we have been called out by Jack, of course. Max Mara coats are always whatever, and then that also gets into Ted Baker coats as well, which is that I also have picked up.
But the fact that he's literally named another 2, like, just shows that
he didn't name Ted Baker. He just brought to mind that's the. But yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I actually get it. Do you know what? It gets exciting when you find a style in men's clothes that holds value. Does that make sense? So we were talking about like in the summer with the cargo shorts type thing. Some of the normal brands, suddenly there's a bit of value in them, and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, I found something in the normal brands that's worth money.
Yeah.
Or like certain jacket styles, you're like, oh yeah, this is actually worth money, and brings other brands, like normal brands that aren't worth money, into light. So that's really cool and a lot rarer with men. But I like it, and it's much more prevalent in women's. Like, for example, those 2 dresses or whatever, like a Sainsbury's own brand dresses, and if you get the style right, suddenly they're worth like 30 quid, which is ridiculous, just considering they're Sainsbury's. But sourcing is where I think it's very interesting, because do you feel like you can? So Andy said it as well, like the 25 to 45 range for women there's a lot available. Like there's a lot available, and there's a lot of basic brands that are common that you can come across that sit within that range frequently. I don't know if I pick up more men's or women's. I actually think it's about equal. So obviously I checked myself.
I'd be interested to see it listed right now.
That's what I'm doing. I'm about to check.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. I'm going to do the same thing, because I think it would be super interesting to see whether I've currently got like way more men's or.
I got 680 men's.
Okay.
And hold on. 618 men's. I'm guessing and 781 women's.
Okay.
Which is interesting, because that probably matches up the ratio difference in my sales as well.
So I'm like 481 men's, 817 women. So that kind of matches up, because it's pretty much
the same thing.
Yeah.
So saying you sell more men's or women's for both of us, it looks like it's just based on how much we get or list each.
And I think that's pretty sort of on track with what we've been saying, right? Men's we can probably get more value for, but we're going to find less of the good stuff. And women, you can probably get less of a value for, but you can just find shit tons more of it. So that's pretty much prevalent with what our stores are saying.
If you had to start someone, like, and pay like men's or women's, what are you starting them on?
Oh, I could 100%. It's not even close. It's men's. Because it's the quickest and easiest to learn. It'll be the quickest and easiest to get around every single charity shop you've ever wanted to go into. And for the most part, like, there's probably a few brands where it's slightly different. There's very little style. Like, there are styles that will improve the value, but realistically, like, you know, when we talk about toasty toast and non-toasty toast, like men's non-toasty toast, it doesn't have a significant hit like a women's non-toasty toast would. So like the value for men's, even if it's not the right style, doesn't really get impacted as much. It just means that if you get it right style, it's impacted more in a positive way, in my opinion. So I think it's the easiest to learn, it's the easiest to source. And it's the most money as well, right? Because if you're going right, you start now, you list 3 a day, you go and hammer men's clothing store, like every men's clothing section in every charity shop, you're going to be able to find 3 a day pretty well, and you're usually going to get 35 plus for most like the items.
Okay, so establishing that men's is easier, but women's is more plentiful, right? Yeah. Do you think we'll go into the kind of the second side of things, but does that correlate to depend where you are in the country?
I don't think so. I think so. What tends to happen in my, like, we know that I travel, right? Like I like to go around all these places and stuff like that. But one thing I've noticed massively is that expensive areas are just more expensive, right? So when it comes to my area, for instance, the men's section has like a rough sort of guide of how much everything is like, and they're all pretty similar around each charity shop in my towns, right? And then I go down south and they're higher, but again, it's very similar sort of price ranges around the same sort of thing. And the same happens with women's. So if you go to, for instance, if you go to Somerset, sea salt in general is around £12 a piece, right? On average, right? Up here, it's about 6 or 7, maybe a push. So what happens is just everything rises rather than, do you know what I mean? So the difficulties, in my opinion, is getting bread and butter items down south is harder because you have to pay more for it. Whereas I can get more bread and even if you looked at both of our stores, that correlates as well, right? I have a lot of items that you might not be able to buy in your area and sell for the same price that I can sell it for. Whereas, you know what I mean? So that kind of makes it, because you might have to pay £12 for this item to sell it for 32, and you might not want to do that, but I'm paying £6 for that item and I'm selling it for 32. So do you know what I mean? I think that's where it gets difficult.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay, it's interesting you say this, right? When I have been up north, like when I went to Manchester and we went on little sourcing rounds or whatever, I noticed significantly less good quality in men's. That not the women's wasn't like crazy different, but the men's, like for example, just on simple things like Levi's and like diesel jeans and stuff like that, there's like quite a lot around here. Like it is almost never a day when I go around and don't find multiple pairs of Levi jeans. Can't normally buy them, but I will find.
Your prices are about 15 for the Levi's in the shop.
Yeah, they can be anything from like 9 to some maximum 20 quid. You know, like it's crazy. But I normally say around 12. I'd say it's probably where the Levi's sit, and that's not even like the ones I'd want. For example, like the 501s and stuff like that is kind of me what I go for. Also, I would just like to jump back to Jack's point of he doesn't fully agree that men's brands don't have style. I also would agree with this, like in terms of if you think of, definitely some are more desirable, but I think you used YMC as an example. I don't think that's the best example because I think YMC generally most stuff will sell. But if you do take like the more simple brands,
yeah,
like with women's, right? Like for example, like a lot of me and Em will sell a lot of Toast will sell. Those are like the good brands in women's. Obviously, you can still buy on Toasty Toast or whatever, but a lot of it will still sell anyway. Whereas, you know, the Bodens and fucking Zara's and everything in this world, you need to get the right thing for it to sell and to be worth money. I think that applies the same. So if you look at like Uniqlo versus YMC, Uniqlo, if you get the right sort of styles with the overshirts and stuff like that, then you can get some money out of it. Versus if you get like YMC, then you can get quite a few things.
My point was more like the Stone Islands of this world. Like, there's no style with Stone Island. If you've got Stone Island, they're pieces.
Yeah, that's the same as like
like it all
like Cezanne.
Yeah, okay, maybe. But my point was just that I don't think men have as much of a style as women do, and it's not style as much.
It's not as much, but I think it definitely. I think where style comes into its own a lot of the time is more common brands, and that's where it really takes place. Whereas the brands that just have the brand, you're not really going to go too wrong. But yeah, so I noticed a big difference in like just that sort of thing, like level of quality, which is like just decent jeans. I saw like none when I was roaming around Manchester. Whereas went down here, like I said, I find them all the time, and and that just in my head is like, hey, although men aren't, it might not be crazy stuff. Generally speaking, they just have that bit, or they spend that little bit of more money on a good quality wardrobe rather than the maybe H&M jeans or something like that, which I shop at because big up.
Also, H&M's quite expensive in my eyes.
I mean, compared to like Primark, yeah, but it's not compared to Levi's, which is £100 a pair of jeans.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, that sort of thing, and then. And I think men probably get hit harder if you're talking about like wealthy areas. I think men are less likely to spend money in the wealthy areas on clothes, right? Like women might still want to spend on a nice thing here and there or something stylish or whatever. So, for example, you might find like the Bone or whatever dresses around, even in the other areas. Whereas here, like in terms of nice men's stuff, when them spending up, I feel like they are less likely to. That's less likely if they don't have the money, is their money is not going to go that way. And it probably is harder to find good quality men's clothes. It's more so than women's, especially because especially like the super high end stuff, but you're not going to come. Then again, I found like a really nice suit when I went to Manchester that I've got listed for like 190 to 120 quid. I can't remember. But it's that everyday higher quality.
So you're saying you saw a significant, when you were in Manchester, you saw a significant drop off in quality based compared to your area. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Of men specifically. Like that's the one that was really obviously
women didn't change as much, but men's drastically dropped. Okay.
Yeah, like I couldn't find the basic decent quality staples that I would see around mine, even though I might not be able to buy them, like regarding price, but just like that being there didn't seem to exist as much in the same way.
Yeah.
And even when I've been other places, like in the Midlands somewhere, it's not been at the same level. So that's quite interesting. But so this is it for you who has traveled everywhere, right? Because I hear people talk about it in the north quite often, and a few people in the group that are like, yeah, we just don't have that stuff around me, so they've taken up a different model. Do you like? Is it really, really obviously apparent?
It's so obvious. It's actually insane. Like it really is. But so one thing I always say is if it's not in your area, you travel, right? Like that's the motto to everything. You've just got to like I'll drive 2.5 hours to Oxford to go to the nice places to go and get it. Now I've got to pay more for those items, which means I can't, like I said to you, I can't buy the bread and butter items to sell for 30 because I'm having to pay 12 to 15 for a lot of it, right? So I can't do that. But what I can do is pay £20 for an item that's going to sell for 80 plus. And there's more of those in these areas than there is in my area currently. And what I've noticed with my area specifically is I'm in a relatively affluent area. Like my actual town is quite affluent. It's a nice town. It's like very historic. It's like a very old town. In fact, it actually got voted as one of the best places in the country to live and move to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a very.
Is it because you're there?
It's got a castle. It's got a really old Harry Potter looking train station. It's got river going through it. It's a lovely town, right? And
has anyone tried to run into a wall there?
No. But yeah, like so I always say there's a lot of 70 plus white people here. Like that's kind of the vibe, right? And it's no, but there's a lot of affluence here, and I find it difficult to buy good quality. But when I do, the price isn't crazy. So when I do find the good items, I'm not having to pay a shed ton of money for it, basically. So that's one of the positives I have in these areas, at least from my experience. It's very hard to come by, and it has become increasingly more obvious over the last couple of months. And as we've spoken about, I've moved away from going to a lot of charity shops now. I was like 99.9% charity shops, and I was doing it 6 days a week, 9 to 5. And I've been to like 5 in the last 2 weeks because it's just become blindingly obvious that it's very difficult right now. They're all struggling. I speak to them on a regular basis, and every single one of them is struggling with quality. everybody's donating the Primark, and then they're selling their own shit on Vinted, and that's why a lot of my model now goes to Vinted. And again, my quality in terms of clothing that I'm picking up, yes, I'm having to pay more, but for me, Vinted is like me driving to Oxford, except I'm sitting in my home.
Okay, would you now that you're on Vinted, right? Forget even Vinted. Like, would you recommend? Used to recommend, hey, if you haven't got good stuff, then travel. Would you now recommend, hey, if you don't have good stuff, then choose a different method?
I mean, ultimately, I can only go off my own experiences, right? And I love the driving around. I was a driver before this. I was a manager of drivers before this. I love driving around. I'll do it for 16 hours a day, going around. I don't care. I love it. However, from a business perspective, it makes zero sense to drive 2.5 hours anywhere, spend 9 hours going to all the charity shops, then drive 2 hours back. You're spending money on fuel, you're spending money on food, you've just got all that time. I could do that run and get 15 items, or I could sit at home and get 10 to 15, 20. I've gotten 30 before, and usually you get to pick and choose what's coming up on your phone. Like you're putting the brands in you want, and all this sort of stuff. Like you're putting the price ranges you want. You are literally just going, I'll have this, and this. I don't.
Out of interest, how long is it taking you now? Like, so obviously you say you go to, so there's two things, but first we'll deal with this and then I'll go to the next one. But so obviously it took you 2 hours to go there, and then you have to source 15 things and you come back 2 hours. How long is it taking you to get 15 to 20 on Vinted a day?
I mean, I am being way more picky now than I've ever been. And obviously Tasha still goes to charity shops because there's two of us, so it makes life. We do one charity shop, one Vinted. But at some point in the very near future, we're going to be both on Vinted sniping. So what's going to happen then is she's going to focus on the stuff right now that I'm getting 15 to 20 off. That's taking me maybe 4 or 5 hours, right? Because I'm a lot of the stuff I'm seeing I don't want. So I've got and obviously price is a big thing right now. But the ease of access, right? And I'm not having to spend money on the fuel. And like I said in the last podcast, right? I'm filling my van up once every 2 weeks rather than twice a week. So that's saving me £85 a fill up. And then what's happening is I'm going to go into the more. So I'm still going to do trainers and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I know the strat. I was just interested.
But I'm also going into now the more bread and butter. So I'm going to be looking at them like we've spoken about before.
Have you not been doing that? So have you not been picking up the things you pick up for £4, so which would be like £7 all in, and flipping that into 25 to 30 pounds.
If I'm buying anything now, it has to sell for 30 to 35 at the bare minimum, which is obviously still bread and butter. But my price now is I'll pay £10 for anything, which goes to £13.69. And I'll pay that for anything that's £35 now. And yes, maybe like on averages that might squeeze the margin a little bit more, but I'm also not paying £170 every 2 weeks on fuel that I would be, and also like I used to buy my food with the business cards and all that sort of stuff. So it ultimately it's gonna be the same.
But question: do you feel like you're eating better or worse now?
What's that? Sorry.
Do you feel like you're eating better or worse now you're at
home? It's actually a flip because sometimes I eat better now than when I was out, because you've spoken about before, like sometimes you'll have a break, and if you have a break and a drink and you go and sit and eat something, if it's a sandwich or whatever it is, right, that takes time out of your day. And sometimes once you've done that, the next section of the day where you've got to go back sourcing can be a little lethargic and like, I've had it. So I used to just eat meal deals while I was driving to the next town. I used to just go in McDonald's and grab a burger, take it out, eat that while I was driving. Like in terms of, I was never having a break because I wanted to be the most efficient as possible. So now I'm eating slightly better. It's still not great, but it will improve over time.
Because now you have like more access to more food. You just find yourself eating throughout the day. I think I'll genuinely be better. I'm gonna try and like food shop specifically for the fact that we're gonna be at home, because realistically, like neither of us are usually at home. So we don't actually do a dinner shop, like in terms of like midday, like snacky shop. We don't do that shop. We have a lunch shop. Yeah.
No, we have a HelloFresh for like tea time or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't actually do it like a midday shop. Like, so that's something that we're gonna have to factor in. But in general, if you do it in bulk, it's obviously going to be more cheap than going to Greg's and spending like £6 a time, £7
Okay, back off that now. So my next thing I was going to say basically is that obviously you say it's not worth driving 2 hours. It is if you can guarantee something, right?
Yes.
Like say you had a Connect and you basically always came back with 40 things.
Yeah.
Life's sweet. Like depending on what you've got going on and what's happening, you can absolutely make it worthwhile. But generally speaking, I understand where you're coming from, and that's kind of how it works. Okay, going back to the divide, because this is kind of what this is about. So obviously you're saying clear difference between north and south, but also clear difference in prices between north and south, generally speaking, except for certain areas. Now, what I was going to say is even here, right? Different areas have different prices. So even though there's like generally better stuff overall, but the prices are high, you can skirt that by like going to the areas sometimes just outside of wherever the wealth is, or like a particularly wealthy area or city or town, and you'll get like a trickle down of stuff that gets to the more affordable area that's still good. Up north wise, is there still the pockets of wealth? Like, is it worth like going to? I've heard the luxury pickers talk about this before, looking at like Waterstones and stuff like that, and Waitroses and blah blah blah.
You can look at house prices. You can look at average wage in these areas. So outside of Manchester, so there what we found, at least what I found, right? There are pockets outside of Liverpool. There are pockets outside of Manchester where there are some very affluent areas. Now Liverpool and Manchester have both got very good football teams. There's like and stuff like that, and a lot of the people. So you can just look at where the players live, because they're not going to live in the city. They're going to live on the outside or whatever, and you see where the big houses are and stuff like that. So my friend used to live in Hale in Altrincham, and that's a very affluent area. And then you can look at little pockets around there. There's Wilmslow, which is another very affluent area. Alderley Edge. So Mo Salah, who plays for Liverpool, I don't know if you know him, but he there was a video of him. There was a video of him driving through Alderley Edge in his £1 million McLaren the other day. So like this is so these are where the players are going, right? And I'm pretty sure Rashford got a ticket in Alderley Edge once. So like this is where the players are going. Now, when you go to these areas, prices are expensive, and some are more expensive than down south. Like I've been to like some very like Chipping Norton and stuff like that. Like I've been to some very expensive places on the outskirts of Oxford, and these rival, if not exceed, values and prices. But they undervalue a lot of the, like I picked up, the Aeroloft running vest I talked about, £4 because they underprice the majority, like the basic stuff. And
the basic stuff is still normal price, but when they get
they'll get. I found a reversible Gudrun, like big, like linen jacket, like reversible. It was sick, £7 because like they're just not on it. But like if you have like a Prada polo shirt, it's £40. So that's where it gets a bit more interesting. But there are still pockets inside of the north. I've spoken to a few people in the group, and I've tried to help them with areas that I have sourced that I think are good. I'll in fact in the group, what I might do is actually do like a where I've been in the north, and
do a Chris map. That would be great.
The towns the
Chris Trail.
Exactly.
Chris Trail with me. Drive along with me on my map around the country.
Yeah, I've had really good success around the outskirts of Leeds. And one thing that is massive as well, by the way, and one thing that is a definite way to look at things is you're quite close to Surrey University, I believe.
Yeah, reasonably.
And then Liverpool have got like 3 universities. Manchester have got a couple. Leeds have got one. So if you can find the cities that have got really good youthful universities and then hit the surrounding areas of those, a lot of the stuff. So one thing that a local charity shop to me had was they had a deal with a university where basically once the dorms have been left at this very, very posh like university, everything in there is basically like school property, essentially, like once you've finished or whatever.
Yeah, I know.
And they took all of that stuff and give it to my charity shop, like one of my local charity shops. They had a Miri, Chrome Hearts, like fucking crazy brands. And they had like Jordan 1s and all this. Yeah, all that. They priced it at £400, by the way, for a hoodie.
That's fair. It's probably still a good deal.
Yeah. so they had, and they're like Canada Goose and all this sort of stuff. So if you can try and find the towns outside of or the surrounding areas of very affluent like areas of universities, and also I read somewhere that somebody actually got in contact with a university and did a private deal, and they.
So this is what I was going to say actually, is that there's a guy at my car boot sale who used to do that with shoes for universities.
Yeah.
Like the clear they'd leave and then they'd leave shoes behind, and he'd go in and buy like it wasn't exactly cheap though. Like he didn't get a great deal a lot of the time, and I think because this university did it, like they were like bidding against other people. Like he had to outbuy other people who were also interested in the same sort of thing. But yeah, so okay, you say universities and towns and cities, right? So to my university town, the one that is near Surrey Uni, is actually a bit expensive. Some of the shops, there's quite a few shops there, but all the basic chains are reasonably expensive.
A couple rounds, sorry.
Yeah. Do you think so? Town versus city, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously universities generally in cities. I would say I avoid any major city ever.
Have you ever been to Bristol?
No.
It's the most ridiculous you'll ever see. I mean, there's probably London, right? And that's another category. But in terms of actual city centre that I've been around, like I've been to Liverpool, I've been to Manchester, I've been to Leeds, I've been to Nottingham, and I've been to Bristol. And Bristol is horrendous. It is so expensive. It's outrageous. And I'd imagine it's probably because it's an up and coming city. It's very youthful and stuff like that. So I'd imagine it's just trying to catch on to that, but it is outrageous around there.
So so I got really excited the other day because we had a 50% off charity shop wide sale.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go to all the shops that are normally too expensive. I'm gonna clear house. It's gonna be fantastic. And those shops are in like major cities, as major as you can be around me, generally speaking, without going into the Londons of this world, but like the bigger cities with like the main shopping centers, and went to it, and I was like, okay, first town, nice, half price, good, got quite a few bits, fantastic. Second town, there's two of this shop in there. Went to the first one, half price, got like one or two bits. The one that I was excited for is this shop that's opposite the shopping center, like one of the major shopping centers opposite John Lewis, and their prices are crazy. Like crazy. I think I went in and it was like a pretty green shirt for like £35. Yeah. And I'm like, great, fantastic. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna pick up all these bits. They scammed the wholesale because they're the expensive shop, and even when they're like, we're not even gonna bring the prices down for a shop wide sale, they had a rail where they'd taken the sign that says off everything in store and put these items. And it was just like a paper handwritten note, and it was a rail of like a circle rail about 20 things, rubbish. And they were like, yeah, these items. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, oh, I might as well have a look at the other stuff while I'm here, And it's just, there's no chance. I was actually looking, I was like, even with half price on some of this stuff, I went over to a John Smedley cardigan for 40 quid. And I was like,
even half price, that's not.
I've got no chance. And then I went to the next town. I was excited. I was like, yeah, come on. This is another rich town. I know it's expensive here. Went in, same thing. They've got a rail of all the stuff, the old stuff that they haven't been able to get rid of, and all the new stuff on the shelves is way too expensive for me to buy, and it's not coming down to half price. I actually just spoke to one of the other charity shops, and like, they shouldn't be doing that. It's literally meant to be, as advertised on their website, a everything in every store is meant to be 50% off. But because they are the pretty expensive shops, they couldn't be seen to be doing like a 50% off sale, or that they don't like, oh, we don't need 50% off because we sell our stuff for such high prices anyway. And it's just mental. But I will genuinely avoid any major city, because I feel like that comes with the extra footfall comes the extra pricing, and anything like that. So I just feel like it's never worthwhile going there. And I think towns, if you can find those rando towns that are in the middle of nowhere and kind of congregate everyone's stuff, because they're the only one in the local area of a decently wealthy area. Those are like the best place you could possibly be, but they're hard to find. And
I'm super interested for your town, right? So my town, like it's got like obviously it's a central bit, right? We don't have like loads of towns around us. We're quite country really, but there's like we've got like a central section of town, and then we've got like a circular like round of like just like little more rural areas.
My grandma lives there.
And do you have? So I've got my town centre of Shrewsbury, right? And then around it, there's probably another 8 or 9 charity shops. Do you have like town centre charity shops and then some around the outside in your like where you live? Because one thing that I noticed is obviously my town is relatively affluent, etc. Not to the south degree, but like for where we are. And the town centre prices are always like jacked up, right? It's town centre. But then I have the like 7 or 8 around, and they're always so much better. Like I'll quite frequently just not bother going into my town centre and just doing a lap of the outskirts, because that's just where everything's slightly better, right?
Generally around me, everything's a lot more congested, right?
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking.
So like your distance between towns is not that big. Like you will go from one town, drive like along a main road for a bit, and then you're in the next town. So you don't really have those outskirts charity shops around the big cities or towns. You just have a different town with different shops. So you don't really have that sort of thing. But yeah, I think if you can find them, they're good. And like I said, I would even say within town centers, like or city centers, if you can get towards the further away you get from directly in the center, the better the prices get. And again, because of footfall and stuff like that, which is really interesting, how they do all that instead of have standardized pricing. And even so, I know this about a lot of charity shops. They got like a tier list.
Oh, Age UK are the worst.
No, Cancer Research, Age UK, the British Heart Foundation, any big shop nationwide, even the local ones that had this 50% off sale, they're a local branch or a hospice type thing. They rank their stores. They're like, hey, if you get good stuff, you send it to this shop. You don't try and sell it. You guys suck. Don't bother. You're not going to get the money we deserve for this item, and they'll send it to like one of their A ranks or B ranks.
The exact same. So there's a place called Stow on the Wold, in Oxford, or like I think it's actually classed as I don't know, but it's a really nice affluent area, but it's more of a touristy town. Like it's quite a pretty place, and they've got one Sue Rider in there that every Sue Rider within a 50-mile radius sends all of the good stuff to, and they will. I found my first ever it was my first ever at the time, but it was like a really nice like puff sleeved corduroy Laura Ashley made in Wales dress, and I was like, oh shit, this is sick, and the price tag was £95, and I was just like, great, it's so great. But they are not willing to work with me. I get on really well with the woman. She's the one that when I bought, because
this is the one you talked about.
Yeah, this is the one I drove. Basically, I dress like a homeless person for the most part, right? And when I bought this, I was looking at this hoodie, and it was the Loave one, and she just looked me up and down and went, "Oh, you do realize this is £40, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was well off with me, but then I was going in every week and I was spending money with her, right? And then she got naturally just like a little less combative, and we get on really well. Like every time I go in there, she's like, "Oh, how's it going?" Whatever. But she is. I've tried. I spoke to you about the pitch, right? Like tried to get. And she was none of it. And some of the stuff she's putting on, like I go in there, if I go in there now, she'll be like, "Oh yeah, the sale rail's over there," because she knows I can't pay the like crazy prices. She wanted like £45 for a pair of Oscar trousers that weren't linen and stuff like that. It's crazy. But she's like, "Oh yeah, we get the prices," and so I've been in there every week for about 6 months, and I've only ever seen me and one other person buy anything in that shop. Loads of people come and leave.
It's crazy how people's whole attitudes switch up when you spend money frequently.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
It's so funny because I get it, right? I get it, because until you do, you're just like another shopper or customer, right? And even if you say something to them and you offer them something, like it doesn't really compute in their head. So for example, I have a shop near me, and when I first broached them with the idea of like discounting anything, they were like, Fred. They're like, what are you talking about? And then I went in there a bit more, and obviously going in there frequently helps as well. And again, a little bit more friendly. And then I'm like, oh, what do you think about this sort of thing? And I'm like, okay, interesting. And then you spend a little bit of money. And then last week I spent like 200 and something. And suddenly, yeah, come on. And then they'll give you access to more stuff and stuff like that. And so showing your money's good is quite interesting, and how that treats
they've got daily targets to hit, right? So like realistically, it makes sense for them to try and work with you to some degree, right? I know in Stowe in the Wold, I spoke to one of it's at Blue Cross, and they were saying their target for the day is like £460, and the week before they hit it not once. They hadn't hit it once, but then they were pricing stuff so ridiculous, and I was like, you've got to, like, as the manager in that shop, right? I understand that they have like CEOs and all this sort of stuff where it gets a bit more difficult, right? Like I understand all that, but on the same token, they don't see all of the stock that's coming in. So just price it more reasonably. Don't tell anyone, and just make more money, and then they will see that you're hitting your targets because you're selling things. If you're not selling, you hit your target. It's crazy.
I say this to shops as well, because like they're like, oh yeah, you know, they're almost like, we're made to price it like this. I'm like, bro, you make up the prices based on what's in front of you. Like you're like yeah, you've got a guide or whatever, but you're just making it up. Like you're like, some of them obviously check comps or whatever, but like for the most part, even after they check comps, they then go, oh, what do we sell it for in this store? Because we're not going to sell it for that price. So we'll just make it up. Like, and so when they say they can't discount stuff or stuff like that, I find it funny, because I'm like, you made up the price in the first place. Well, you could have made it up to be 500. And for example, like the shop next door, right, has had a 50% off sale for ages. And I've obviously asked about discounts before. And then, like, if I ever bought them the idea of, hey, can you give me 50% off on this item you just put out, they'd be like, no. But when the 50% off sale is going on that they've made up, suddenly it's like, yeah, obviously, yeah, 50% off that one. Obviously, it's going to be 50% off. I'm like, fantastic. But I do find that funny, and the mentality around it. And it's just, there's nothing against charity shops or anything like that. It's just human psychology, which is quite funny.
Yeah, kind of mind-boggling. The Age UK, like, they've got a folder, and it ranks the most common like brands that get donated. It ranks them in tiers of bronze, silver, gold.
Yeah, I've got the same thing.
And I mean, it's actually slightly beneficial to you if they get good stuff, right? So if you live in a really nice Age UK, like an area where there's an Age UK, they price every Belstaff at $49.99. So if you could get a really nice one for $49.99, then it's actually a benefit to you. And the same with Barbour, they'll have it as like a certain tier, and usually it doesn't matter what the item is. So I've seen them price Barbour jumpers at $39.99 and Barbour coats at $39.99. So if you can get a really nice wax one, the long ones, one of the ones that do like 150 to 180, you can still pay the $39.99. It's not an issue. So actually, it diminishes a lot of its like importance if the item.
Yeah, it depends what the item is, because they don't know. And it works the other way around. If they have like it's funny because they have like that mislabeled. So forget the exact brand. They'll have like a tier list. So they have like, oh, if it's designer, then you price it at this price. If it's non-designer, then you price it at this price. And the people don't know what what level it actually is. And they'll have, even with the exact names, sometimes they have the exact list. They'll price stuff that is actually realistically should be in the higher tiers. In the lower tier, like the mid to lower tier prices, and then the higher tiers should not be been there, and they should be at like the mid to low tier prices, but they've got it all mixed up. But Andrew is right also, where just to give charity shops a fair shout, they do have people like area managers and stuff come in and check stuff. But I know managers that argue with their area managers like, hey, it won't sell for that price in the shop. Like, I know my shop, and I know what people want, and
managers are actually clued on. Like, there are obviously some exceptions, but a lot of the managers are clued on. They understand that it's not going to be priceless, and sometimes they'll just knock a couple of quid off what the recommended like area manager prices or something. And then what they'll do is, if anybody like my shop up the road, if anyone ever came in and complained to the manager, you'd be like, oh yeah, we've had an influx of volunteers, and you know, sometimes things gets mixed up, and they never bothered, because when they do it, guess what? They sell more items. If they sell more items, they make more money. Like just the cycle of it is insane. If I went onto eBay now and and like say my average cost of goods is £7, right? And I've got items at like 30, 40, 50. If I just drop my price, every single one of them, to £25, I would sell a shit ton more. Yes, I'd make less money over like per item, but overall I'm gonna make more money. And that's just naturally what's gonna happen, right? Like, and obviously they've got the added bonus that they don't have cost of goods. So you can definitely do better. And they're making it more difficult. And then, for instance, I said this the other week, but about not last year, the year before, there's a donation center that opened up like 2 minutes from my house, right? Salvation Army. And since that charity shop has opened, I've spent just over 40 grand in that shop.
That was crazy to me. I actually never talked about it, but that is mental.
It's insane. I mean, I've made a lot of money out of it, right? But I've spent so much money there, and I go there on a consistent basis, and I'm like, oh yeah, can you keep some bits? Can you let me have a look through this? Nope. You just get what you're given whenever you come. And I don't expect special treatment. But like, it's like, if I'm willing to spend this amount of money, like, just there's
I'm impressed, yeah. But like, then there's the argument. Well, if you're spending that amount of money anyway, we don't need to do anything for you because you're going to spend that money regardless.
You can spend way more.
That's crazy. I can't believe you find enough stuff in a shop to get that.
I'm not even joking, bro. I think I spent £8 in the first like 4 to 8 weeks because they had so much stuff, and they were getting. Mate, I bought at least 4 or 5 Burberry trench coats off them, and not one of them's been for more than 50 quid. Like, they get so much, but now they've got their own eBay store. So they said to me, "Oh yeah, we're not putting clothes on it. We're not putting trainers on it. It's going to be for the gold, the silver, the watches, the knickknacks. You know, like the bric-a-brac stuff that they're not going to be able to sell for like 200 quid in shop, but will sell for 200 on eBay. That's what we're going to put on there." I go onto their store now, and they've got Issey Miyake on there. They've got like all of the boots, like all of the stuff. They've got vintage leather Loewe jackets on there, like selling. And I'm like, so it ultimately I don't spend any money in there now. Like, I don't spend anything.
There you go. In conclusion, okay, what are we saying? What are 3 things? So men's versus women's in terms of sourcing.
If you're starting out and you want an easy life, start with men's and do men's. If you want to really understand and do well as a business, you need to have women's in there. I think like I said before, men's will get you a lot of good money, but less regularly. Women's will get you less money, but
this is through. We're basically looking at charity shops only, realistically.
Yeah.
Well, because if you want to start the basic routes of like charity shopping and car booting, then yeah, I'd agree. Women's is plentiful. We'll be able to scale a bit more if you're just going charity shopping or whatever. Men's is simpler and generally has a bit higher value. There's plenty of good women's stuff. And in terms of selling it, it's the same thing applies. Obviously, if you're picking it up and it's harder to pick up the right thing, then it's going to be harder to make sure you're selling it and it's going well. In terms of the country and the divide there, I think
women's is the most average across the board. Again, if it's super bread and butter, it's going to be harder down south.
Yep.
In general, it's very similar. Men's I don't really pick up a huge amount of men's when I go to Oxford and places like that.
Yeah. When
I do, it's usually good stuff, right? And you're saying that you're seeing way more good stuff, even if you can't buy it down south versus when you were up north. So I still think, I've always said this, mate, at some point in the next like 5 to 10 years, I want to move down south and I just want to go and clean up down there because I know so many areas that are so good. There's just so much good stuff down there.
Then in terms of like the sourcing divide in this country, they're 100% there's better quality down here. Generally speaking, 100% the prices are more expensive. You got to work with what you're given, but I'd say always seek out the places that like fit the bill, right? Like instead of being set on, hey, I've got whatever around me. I personally wouldn't say travel as extreme as you.
No, I wouldn't do it either. Like I'm on that board now. Like I wouldn't do it either. Maybe but
it's one or two things. Is either find the places around you that do have the stuff, and if you can't afford it, try and make it make sense, which is basically what I've done. Like a lot of it doesn't make sense, but I've had to make it make sense. And then again, look out for the little towns. Look out for don't go to the main places. Try and tread off the beaten track. Just play it different. big different, and the divide definitely does exist, 100%. But it doesn't mean you can't make it work anywhere and everywhere. It can work in some way, shape, or form, and maybe that means doing a different method at the end of the day. But even with the most basic method of this, has kind of been around charity shopping. You can probably still make it work.
Yeah, I agree. And then always stick to the outskirts of towns and cities. Don't go central. Yeah. Towns is slightly different. You can probably get away with it for the most part, but cities is insane. And also, a lasting comment: don't go to Bristol.
Lovely.
Mental.
We wish you good luck on your journeys now. I don't know if that. I'm not sure that'll help with anything, but
motivation for the week.
And we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Peace out.
Outro.